Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2024 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the Roadmaster Smart Diode Wiring Kit for vehicles with incandescent bulbs. But before we get into that, let's take a couple minutes, check it out, and make sure it's going to work for you. So before we jump right in, I figured it'd be useful just to address probably one of the biggest questions a lot of people ask, and that is, what are the main parts I'm going to need to flat tow my vehicle down the road in the first place? And there's going to be a total of 5 main components. You'll have the base plate, which gives you an attachment point. That way you can hook your tow bar up to it. This is going to be the actual link that connects the front of your Equinox to the back of your motorhome. Then you'll have safety cables, and these are just there in the event of unlikely disconnect. They're going to keep everything paired together. The fourth main part will be your tow bar wiring, and this is just going to transfer the lighting functions from the back of your RV to the back of your Equinox. And last but not least, you're going to have a supplemental braking system. All right, what that's going to do is apply the brakes in your SUV whenever you hit the brakes in your coach, helping to bring you to a complete and predictable stop. So here's a perfect example on how our diode wiring is going to work. You know, we got the left turn signal going on our motorhome, and it's being sent back here to our Equinox. And that's going to hold true as well for the right turn, your brakes, as well as your tail lights. So you have all of your bases covered there. And when it comes to, you know, picking out tow bar wiring, hands down, at least in my opinion, the diode wiring is definitely the way to go. And I say that because once it's installed, you know, you're not even going to notice it's there. But more importantly, the setup time, whenever you're ready to hook up to your motorhome, it's going to be extremely simple. You know, you're just going to have to plug a cable into the back of the coach, one into the front of the Equinox, and you're good to go. You're not going to have to deal with a bunch of wiring and stuff, say like magnetic lights, for example. Although those work fine, it's one of those things where you're going to have to set them up every single time you want to flat tow. You know, they stick to the body of your vehicle. You got to run your wires up, then take them all apart and store a big bundle of wires. So with the diode kit, it really just streamlines the whole setup process. There are going to be 2 different types of kits, if you will, or 2 different types of diodes that are available for the Equinox. And what one is going to work for you is really just going to depend if your vehicle has incandescent bulbs, so kind of your classic light bulb, or LED taillights. So in our case today, we have an LT model. It has incandescent bulbs, and so that's the diode kit we want to go with. But on the other hand, I believe some of the Premier models and some of the other models will have those LEDs. So if your vehicle is equipped with LEDs, you definitely want to make sure to use that diode kit. So I mentioned setting everything up, right? Whenever you're ready to flat tow, plug in one end to the back of your motorhome. Then the other end of the cable simply just goes to the 6-way connector at the front of your Equinox. And that's it. You don't have to really bother with anything else in terms of tow bar wiring. And there's 2 different variations of this kit as well. One of them, for example, the one that we use today is what I like to call kind of the bare bones kit. All right, you get your diodes, your wiring, and kind of some ins and outs to help you install it. And you would want to use that kit in the event of if you already had an umbilical cable and a 6-way round type connector. So for example, our tow bar, the Roadmaster Nighthawk, came included with those components, so it don't make sense to buy them twice, really, you know, so that's why we use the bare bones kit today. On the other hand, if you don't have those parts already, or you chose a different tow bar that doesn't come included with that, you're going to want the full package, so to speak. That'll come with the diodes, the wiring, those ins and outs, but you'll also get a 7-to-6 cable as well as that connector plug. But other than that, at the end of the day, you know, as far as tow bar wiring is concerned, like I said, this is definitely my recommendation. They seem to be very reliable. We rarely run into any issues with them, and really help make setting up everything a straightforward process. As far as the installation goes, not gonna lie, it's a little time consuming. Not so much that it's complicated, it's just having to route all the wires and everything. It takes up some time, but it's one of those things you do once, it's over, and you get to enjoy all the benefits of having a simple setup from then on. So If you plan on hooking everything up yourself, feel free to hang around. We'll go ahead, pull into the garage, and get started on it now. To begin the installation for our diode wiring, you can take the big bundle of wire, take one end of it, drop it from the engine compartment down to the front of our vehicle, and route this over to the front of your base plate where the connector plugs to go. Now we have the front end of our vehicle taken apart, because we're doing this at the same time that we're doing our base plate, which I definitely recommend. Gives you a lot more room to work. It can be done with everything put back together though, just take you a little bit longer. And I also suggest, if you're going to be installing a towed vehicle battery charge line kit, to route this wire at the same time, because it's going to go to the same area and save you a little bit of time there. And that's exactly what we did here today. At the front of our wiring here, you want to take the rubber dust boot from your connector plug. We'll slide that over, and I usually just put it on one of these tabs here to keep our wiring held up. And what we can do for our diode wire is we're going to separate the wires here. So just very carefully kind of snip between them, and you want to pull these back. I usually do 3 or 4 inches, something like that. I like to kind of take them all again and cut that last 1/4 or 1/2 inch off. That way, in case if we nicked one of the wires when we were splitting them or something like that, kind of gives us a fresh start. But on all 4 of these ends here, you want to strip back the insulation a little ways and give that wire a good twist. That way it'll fit in our connector well. So do the same thing there for our remaining ends. If you look at the back of your connector plug now, it's kind of tricky to see because the lettering is right behind the terminals, but they are labeled. And so if you start right up here, that's labeled TM for taillights, so the brown wire goes to it. This one's GD for ground, so the white wire goes there. You have your LT for left turn, yellow wire plugs into that. And then your RT for right turn, so the green wire plugs in there. And so the way these work, take a Phillips head screwdriver and back that set screw out almost all the way. Try not to pull them all out because they're easy to lose. Kind of tricky to get back in. But then you'll just take the appropriate color wire. Since we're doing our tail lights, that'll be the brown. And you'll hold that in place there. And then snug down the set screw. So I'll get this one done and work my way around until we get all the wires hooked up. Got all of our wires hooked up, and this is how it turned out. So really nothing to it, pretty straightforward. Right now what I'm going to do, since we're using the vehicle charge line, I'm going to get that hooked up as well. And once I have that done, we can go from there. With everything hooked up, you know, we can take our dust cover, slide that back into position. I usually come back and seal up everything inside of here with some sealer to help prevent corrosion, but I like to do that at the very end once we verify everything's working. That way if we have to come back in here for any reason and tighten a screw down more or something, it's not a huge mess. So just keep that in mind. I'll put that on and get this secured to our base plate. Moving back up into the engine compartment, you know, where we dropped our wires down, we are going to need to ground the white wire. And it turns out on the driver side shock tower, there's a factory ground that we can utilize. So I kind of bent our wiring to length here. And what you want to do is just very carefully cut just that white wire. And the side that's actually going to our 6-way connector in the front, that's the side you want to work with. We're going to strip back the insulation, give the wire a twist, and we'll take a ring terminal and connect that. And any connections that we make, whether it be a ring terminal, a butt connector, a spade connector, what have you, it's going to be the same process. So we'll crimp that down on there. And then we can remove the nut with a 10mm. And what we'll do, slide that ring terminal over the post. And we'll tighten this back down. And once this is tight here, we're going to do something else with the remaining portion of the white wire. So with this remaining portion, this is just going to nothing, right? It's just on the other end of our harness. We're just going to remove that wire completely from our harness. And you want to hold on to it because chances are pretty good here in a little while we'll use it for a jumper or another wire that we can use to make things a little bit easier on us. With our ground wire set up, we can continue to route our wiring towards the back of our vehicle. And so a little tricky to see with all this stuff in here, but our wire just ran along through here and then dropped straight down the firewall along through here. When you're running wiring, make sure and do your best to avoid hot or moving parts, especially in this area in particular. So I just took our wiring, pushed it down, kind of got all the slack out of it. And instead of going underneath right now and continuing to route it, we're going to go to the back of the vehicle, kind of prep our taillights and everything, and it'll make routing when we get to the back there a little bit easier on us. At the back, if you open up your hatch, we'll remove our taillight assemblies. And to do that, there's these two plastic covers here. And you can just take a small flathead screwdriver or pick or something and just pop them covers open. And underneath there, that will expose a T15 Torx bit screw. So we'll pull both of those out. And then you can grab the tail light, just kind of work it side to side a little bit, but primarily pulling back. The tail light will come out, and then we'll disconnect it. Just push down on these center tabs here. We'll set this light off to the side and do the same thing to get the passenger one removed. The reason we pulled these out now is so we can take a pull wire and kind of prep here. So I'm just using a piece of tube. You can use another thick piece of wire or take a metal coat hanger, straighten it out, something like that. But we're just going to drop it from the top down. That way the other end of it will be below the car here. And whenever we run our wires back and we get to this area, we can tape our wires to this and then just be able to pull them straight up into the taillight pocket. So now we're back underneath the vehicle, and right here, this is where our wire dropped down from the engine compartment and it gets routed back. So I just follow these lines. Your vehicle may or may not have a plastic panel here that you can remove. If it does, there's some 10mm head plastics nuts you can pull out to give you more space. Makes it a lot easier to see, but just followed it along back through here using some zip ties along the way to keep our wiring secure. And kind of runs up through here. And in this area, make sure you're secure. You know, you got a lot of suspension parts up in here. So I just kind of went up and around through there. And here's where our wires drop down. And when you get to this point, you can separate the wires into individual strands. And that's because the green one will have to run to the passenger side. These two will run up into the driver's side, but we need to take that white wire that we held onto, that extra bundle of it, and tie it into this brown wire. We're going to cut that and then strip back the ends of the insulation. Give it a twist, and then you want to take that white wire, that bundle of it, the extra bundle, do the same thing. And on these two ends, we're going to tie these together, twist them up real good. And then you can take a butt connector, put it over the end, and I've upgraded to a heat shrink style butt connector because the ends seal up and just help against corrosion a little better, but the standard ones work just fine as well. Just tape them up real good. We'll crimp that down. And then on this end, I'm going to strip the insulation back a little long here. Twist the wire, and I'm going to kind of double that wire over. That way it fits better in the butt connector here. That'll go in the other end. And we'll get it crimped. And being that these are a heat shrink, I'll come back with my, my heat gun here and seal up the ends. Get our yellow and brown wire routed up into the driver's side taillight pocket. That's how it turned out. You know, I taped it to our fish wire, pulled it right up into place. And then our green and white, that just runs along through here. It kind of disappears a little bit because it's hard to see, but just essentially runs behind our bumper cover there, all the way over, and did the same thing, you know, with the pull wire to get the wiring up into that taillight pocket. With our new yellow and brown wires, you know, I cut them to length. We didn't need 5 foot extra wire. On the ends of them, I crimped on these spade terminals here. Same way we did that ring terminal up front when we did the ground. And then I tested our wiring to find the brake light signal. So this is our factory wiring connector plug there. And it turns out this yellow wire with the blue stripe, that's going to be our stoplight signal. So what you can do is cut that, you know, about in half. We'll strip both of those ends back, and these will also receive a red terminal. So once you got both of them connected, you can take your diode, all right? And the side that says car brake in, you're going to take your factory wire here, plug that in. Car brake out, you want to take the factory wire that's closest to the taillight connector plug. That's going to go on to car brake out. And then for the RV tail, you can hook up your new brown wire to it. Get this out of the way here. And for RV brake, you can hook up your new yellow wire to that diode. And then there's one more remaining. All right, it's going to say ground. The kit's going to give you 2 pieces of white wire. They're maybe like a foot long. One end crimp on a ring terminal, the other end a spade terminal. We'll get that plugged in, and now all that's left to do is actually ground this out, ground out the ring terminal here. To ground this, you can take the provided self-tapping screw and run it into our vehicle sheet metal here. Got our diode secured too. I just used a zip tie and kind of zip tied it around our factory wiring, so nothing too crazy. And once I have all these plugged in, one thing I like to do is just take some silicone and put a bead kind of along through there. It kind of helps it not only keep it sealed up, but also helps keep these in place a little bit better. And with this done here, we can grab our tail light. We'll get it plugged back in. Get this reinstalled the opposite way that we removed it. As far as the passenger side goes, it's essentially set up the same way. Really the only difference is going to be the color of your wires. So the factory brown wire with the green stripe, that's going to be our car brake out, right? So closest to the connector plug, car brake out. Factory brown wire with the green stripe The other end goes into car brake in. RV tail, you'll hook up your new white wire to it. RV brake, your new green wire to it. And then of course your ground wire, which I set up exactly the same as the other side there. So got that sorted, got our sealer on there. And we'll plug our tail light back in and get it reinstalled. Test our wiring to make sure that it's working properly. So I'm using this test box here that'll simulate a motorhome or an RV. You're probably not going to have one of these at home, so you can always use your coach, but keep in mind if your motorhome has any issues, it might mislead you into thinking it's something you did on the vehicle side. But with that in mind, we'll run through all of our functions. We'll turn on our taillights. We'll check our left turn signal and then our right turn signal and our brake lights. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the Roadmaster Smart Diode Wiring Kit for vehicles with incandescent bulbs on our 2024 Chevrolet Equinox.